Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's conversation. There we go. Before we get started, I just wanted to share our social media pages so you can all give us a follow. On YouTube, subscribe to our channel at Grade Level Reading. On LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, follow us at Campaign for GLR. And on X, follow us at Reading by Third. We encourage you to use the hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to share anything you learned from today's webinar. Again, welcome to the conversation. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce the webinar. Before we jump in, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our enterprise and programmatic funders, as well as our individual donors. Your support not only allows us to hold these vital conversations, but it also helps us create meaningful opportunities to share insights, foster connections, and build the GLR community. I also want to give special shout out to our Leo sustaining sponsors who you can see on this screen. Thank you for allowing us to have these weekly conversations where we can learn and gather with each other. And before we jump in, I just wanted to share a few housekeeping tips. We would love for you to introduce yourself. So please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select everyone so that we can all see each other's chat messages and all know who is here. We also encourage you to share any insights and reflections throughout the duration of the webinar. You are currently in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate some time throughout the conversation to respond to those questions that you post, and our panelists will be typing out answers as we go along. The webinar is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook, and a link to the recording, as well as all resources, slides, and bios, will be shared in a follow-up email to all who registered. Lastly, we will be posting a brief on-screen poll during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. And last thing before we start, I just wanted to turn your attention to some of our upcoming webinars. Later this afternoon at 3 p.m., we have the continuation of our More Hopeful Futures or Children as Collateral Damage series. This time we'll be focusing on revisiting Head Start as a cornerstone for early learning and development with emerging opportunities. Next week on November 11th, we hope you'll join us for a session that picks up on our Technology Enhanced Teaching and Learning series from the summer with Technology Enhanced Supports for English Language Learners at 3 p.m. The following week on the 18th, we hope you'll join us for an exciting doubleheader. First, with a funder-to-funder conversation with our partners at PBS Kids to get ready to understand what is meant by, or to learn more about Phoebe and Jay coming soon. Later that afternoon at 3 p.m., we'll have the next in our series on parents as curators of their children's education, where we will look at the growth and potential of microschools. And it's not on the screen, but on November 25th, during Thanksgiving week, we will be having a special rebroadcast on our YouTube channel. And while you're all here, I do also want to give special notice that our next Crucible of Practice Salon and the last of 2025 will be taking place on December 9th from 12:30 to 2 p.m. That will be focused on building continuity, sustaining community coalitions during leadership transitions. All of the registration links will be posted in the chat box now so that you can register and join us. And with that, I'm excited to turn it over to Jenny Atkinson with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading to get us started. Jenny?
Thanks so much, Sierra, and I'm happy to welcome you all to today's Crucible of Practice Salon Sparking Literacy One Neighborhood at a Time, Impacting Growth of the Reading Captains Program. The Crucible of Practice webinar series started because communities doing work to support early school success for children wanted the opportunity to really delve into how others were successfully doing similar work in other places. One of the benefits of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading Community Network is that it provides us with the ability to learn from others who have the same goals we do for our children, families, and communities. There are so many creative approaches in the work to help children be proficient readers by the end of third grade. And one of these innovative strategies is the Reading Captains program that started in Philadelphia in 2016. Over time, other communities have heard about the program and learned from the grade level reading community in Philadelphia, Read by Fourth. These communities have taken the model and made it work for their context, and the idea continues to spread. Today, we're going to learn about Reading Captains, hear about how the program works in both Philadelphia and St. Louis, and also learn about a study focused on the impact of trusted messengers particularly the work of reading captains in laundromats in Philadelphia. And we have a fantastic group of panelists with us today for the conversation that include Lauren Campbell, the Community Programming Coordinator with Ready Readers in St. Louis, Clinton Dries, the Director of Community Engagement with Read by Fourth in Philadelphia, Eden Gallant, a Regional Reading Captain Facilitator, also with Read by Fourth, Lisa Greening, who's the Executive Director at Turn the Page STL, the grade level reading campaign community in St. Louis. Lisa's also the Missouri State Lead for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and Susan Newman, EDD and Professor of Teaching and Learning with the Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development at New York University. We are so thrilled to have all of these presenters with us, and you can read more about them in the bio doc that I will post in the chat momentarily. So we're going to start today with Dr. Newman. Can you kick us off by talking a little about how you came to this topic and what your research is showing about trusted messengers and programs like Reading Captains?
Well, thank you, Jenny. I so appreciate being here today because I love this topic, frankly. Uh, Focusing today on creating everyday spaces for early language and literacy learning, and specifically focusing on the trusted messenger. Next slide. So, when you think about um, a child who is learning to read, I wanted you to picture where that child might be. Where are they exactly? Let's take a look. Next slide. So, when we think about a child learning to read, a young child, we often think about preschool and the wonderful teachers we have who are really bringing storybook reading to life. We think about young children who are going into that cubby area and the Cozy Corner library and learning how to do library very, very early on in their lives. And of course, we're learning about literacy and the importance of play, and play and literacy go together. But at the same time, next slide, what we also know is that children are learning about literacy when they're in the barber shop. They're learning about literacy when they're in the grocery store. They're learning about literacy when they're in the laundromat. And finally, they're learning about literacy when the child is just sitting by the stoop reading with their friend or with their sibling. So, the point I wanted to bring up in the very beginning today, next slide, is that when we think about educating all of our children, I wanted us to challenge the notion of boundaries and where literacy lives and who belongs in that story. And I want to say that what we need to do is go beyond our institutions, our preschool, wonderful preschool and school age institutions to think about literacy much more broadly than we ever have done before. Next slide. So, when we think about literacy, where does it really begin? And I know that literacy is a social process. It's a process that begins with the warmth and attachment between someone we love. It's wanting to model what we see in the context of everyday involvement. And it's observing and participating in literacy, whether it's, cooking or doing something along with their parents. So literacy is a very important social process. Next slide. But we also know that literacy is a cultural practice and it connects children to their culture. It helps to build a sense of identity very early on in a child's life, and it serves as a bridge to build relationships with one another. And we need to leverage that strength and the natural interests that children bring in learning very early on. I always say that children are so eager to learn. We need to take advantage of that opportunity. Next slide. So, what we know is that when we think of literacy as a cultural practice, as a social practice, we need to think about the notion of capital. And we often think of human capital, jobs and things like that. But Bob Putnam, very early on, said that capital is also social capital. It's the connections we make to our community. So many of us will feel very comfortable in our community. We feel a sense of belonging because there are people we know and people we depend on in that community. And what Bob Putnam said is there are two forms of of social capital. Next slide. One of them is the kind of capital in our friendships and our family. And we know that when we have questions, we often go to our family and our friends to answer those questions. But we also recognize that there's a form of bonding capital. And one of the things that we know is that we become comfortable in our neighborhood on the basis of some very weak ties. So, for example, I always say I go to a doggy park in the morning and I see the same people for the last 9 years. I know their names, their first names, I know their dog names even more. But what happens is in those informal environments, I learn a lot. I learn what schools are good. I learn what place to get the cheapest groceries. I learn a whole lot based on social ties of people in my neighborhood. And that makes me think about the importance of neighborhood. Next slide. What we often recognize is that traditionally we have thought about people coming to institutions. But what we've recently learned is those institutional people need to go out to the community. And what we say is we need to recognize people where they are in the community in which they live. Next slide. And when we think about that, we want to help more and more children create a 360 surround. And what I mean by that is the community, everyone in that community recognizes the importance of those young children and are contributing to the literacy development of all of those children, whether it's the library, the grocery store, the nail salon, the barber shop. These are all our children, and we need to all contribute to their development. Next slide. So, one of the things we know is that when children are in their neighborhoods, they're in very different contexts. And what we've learned through our research is that children learn words in different contexts. So, the more we take them to different contexts, the more they learn words. So, for example, if they're in a grocery store, they learn grocery store words, cereal and milk and things like that. When they're in the laundromat, for example, they learn about patterning and sorting and colors and measuring. So each of those environments contributes to our children's development and our understanding of the cultural and social needs of literacy. Next slide. So one of the things we began to realize, look at this. This is the laundromat. And many of our families are in that laundromat for 2 hours every single week. And what they do is they bring their children, and the children have absolutely nothing to do. So this is with help with Too Small to Fail. Here's a laundromat, the bland, boring place before that. Then you look at the after, and I want you to notice that there's just a little bit of change. There's a sofa, some books, some playthings for the children to do. Next slide. If we look at it even closer, what we recognize is that we have a little rug and a child-sized chair and just things for children to do when their parents are so busy with laundromat activity. Next slide. So what we did is we did an experiment, and we've now done this experiment in 3 different cities: New York, Philadelphia, Chicago. And what we notice is even with those small changes in the laundromat, what we notice is that children's activities change. And what we saw is that after those little playthings are there, there's more playing, there's more toy play, there's a little bit more reading, there's more activity where the child is not just sitting around and looking at their mobile devices. Next slide. But then we add something called the reading captains. And in our last study, these reading captains are just local volunteers, not just, but local volunteers who come from the neighborhood and who believe in the promise of these young children and want to help them. They're similar in ethnic and racial composition and social and economic status of the neighborhood. And this is so important because they are of the neighborhood. They know the neighborhood, and they serve as what we call trusted messengers. These are people who talk about reading, who talk about literacy with their children, but they also talk to parents about how to get their children in kindergarten and some of the better schools and better teachers. So they're trusted messengers because they really understand the community and they really care about that community deeply. Next slide. And so if you compare what we showed you before, when reading captains come into our laundromat and they're there for 2 hours a week, what we see is a dramatic look at this, the amount of time they're reading to children, they're engaged in activity, and they're talking to children a lot. In other words, the conversational turns just increase dramatically. Next slide. What we see is that in a short period of time, we could count 1,378 literacy related activities on the part of the children as a result of reading captains actually going into those settings and engaging with our children in talk and reading and literacy related activity. Next slide. And what we found is, look at this. I love this. These, I always say that all these reading captains, all they get is a t-shirt, but they're committed to the community. They care about the community and they're listening and communicating and commenting with children. They're labeling and they're having conversational turns. Look at the difference between just environmental changes versus uh, when the reading captains are there. And so what we found is really important. Next slide. What we found is that they were successful because they could engage with the community. Many of the children were Spanish speaking. They engaged in translanguaging activities where they're using Spanish and English at various times. They're reading to children in materials that children care about. There are diverse options for those children to read. They also know enough about the school and can connect with other institutions. So they will talk about, oh, I remember that school. I went to that school. I care about that. And they finally talked about how to embed some of the information in the community itself. And so what we found is when they were of the community, they really created an opportunity for children to talk, for families to come together. Next slide. And so when we ask, this is one of our final slides, when we ask, what do you think the best time to start, talking and reading with your children? They all said very, very early on, which you and I know is really important. And then when we ask, how did they find that information? Well, we go back to our bonding issue that we talked about before. And we find that they've often asked information of the family and friends, but look, already in such a short time, they begin to rely on reading captains because they know that reading captains really understand the community and care about the community and the importance of early literacy in their environment. So in our final slide, what we'll see is that trusted messengers who are living in high-stress communities may have a very distinct advantage in communicating information with children and their families. The context of the laundromat actually act as an organizational broker. This is a word we mean that it really acts as a place where people can meet. And as one reading captain said to us, you see each other every day. You're walking in the same grocery stores. Children go to the school around the corner. They look at us as part of their family. They trust us. They are more receptive to us rather than someone coming from the outside. It's a warmer climate. And finally, they said, we're engagers. We build relationships. We create literacy and connection to literacy. It's going to take a whole village to get where our children need to be. And so when we think about it, final slide, what we'll see is what we're creating, even in a laundromat, is a literacy culture. And I want to thank all the wonderful reading captains that I've come to know who made it happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Newman, for giving us that fantastic overview of the importance of paying attention to places in our communities where learning can happen every day, and as well as, how trusted messengers can strengthen those opportunities for literacy learning. I'd like to turn things over now to Clinton to tell us a little bit about the history of the Reading Captains program in Philadelphia, how it works throughout neighborhoods in the city, and the kind of impact that you're seeing. Clinton.
Thank you, Jenny. Every block has one. If you've ever lived in Philly or a city like Philly, you have that neighbor who knows everyone's name, who organizes summer cookouts, the fall garage sale, who knows to check on Miss Johnson when it snows. Sound familiar? I'm Clinton Dries. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Read by Fourth, Philly's early literacy movement, and it's my job to help with the help of other support staff, especially from our partners at Global Citizen, to help find those neighborhood change makers and turn their social superpower into fuel for early literacy. And that's what Reading Captains is all about. Next slide. Since 2017, Read by Fourth has activated over 1,000 community volunteers across Philadelphia to champion literacy. Reading Captains are volunteers who raise their hands to share literacy information and resources with parents and caregivers in the community. Not teachers, not social workers, just neighbors who care. With simple training and the right tools, they're helping to change early literacy in our city. Next slide. Many of us know the 5 pillars of reading: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. We know the technical skills it takes to decode words on a page, but we can't forget that learning to read doesn't happen alone. It happens when these 3 things are in alignment: when school systems deliver evidence-based instruction equitably to every child, when families have the tools and confidence to support learning at home, and when communities champion education and understand that kids learning to read is tied to a better future for us all. Reading Captains are a bridge between these things, echoing literacy messages from schools to the block. Next slide. And you just heard Dr. Newman talk about weak ties. Great Brookings article on that. And the research confirms what we intuitively know, that these weak ties matter more than we think. The acquaintances at the corner store, the grandma that you chat with at pickup, or the neighbors you meet at the dog park. These weak ties have a very strong impact. They often provide access to support, information, power, and resources, and have even been shown to improve emotional well-being and can boost educational opportunities. Reading Captains use the power of their existing relationships to cheer parents along in small moments, whether that's a sidewalk conversation about an upcoming library story time, or a resource slipped into a hand, sharing that this helped us with bedtime stories, or even as simple as a text message to the parent of a young reader saying, "You're doing great, Mama, keep reading." Small reminders, steady encouragement, these boost parent motivation and connect them to resources that make literacy a little easier, a little more joy-filled, and a little more likely to happen. Like many of you, Read by Fourth is a collective impact campaign championing the power of what we can do together, but we can't forget how powerful we are as individuals and the power of our own reach. Each of us has an extended social circle of about 150 people, and that's Dunbar's number. Interesting piece of research and social theory that is helpful in these sorts of programs and how you think about impact. For Reading Captains, that means the potential to reach hundreds of children by supporting their parents. Next slide. Brotherly love and sisterly affection is not just a motto here in Philadelphia. Yes, Philly has a reputation, a little rough around the edges, passionate, and definitely loud. But here's the truth. We show up for each other, especially when it comes to our children. Philadelphia is a city of neighborhoods. Block culture is deeply embedded in our DNA. Reading Captains doesn't create something new. It works because it amplifies what Philly already does best. And next slide, we'll go through a couple of examples of what activities reading captains are doing. So we've held book block parties and tabled out events. On the left, you see a reading captain-led event in South Philly for Literacy Festival hosted by Miss Ty. In the bottom right, you see some wonderful reading captains supporting Eden's an Eden-led event. You'll be hearing from Eden after me, her Latinx Literacy Festival. And we also have read captains supporting organizational partners. And the picture in the top right is a reading captain tabling at and supporting one of our favorite partners, Treehouse Books, and their annual Literacy Day celebration. Next slide. We've designed little free libraries and installations. To the left, you see volunteers building examples of little free libraries, the picture in the middle, and our reading captains who can proudly celebrate little free libraries by having them in front of their homes and making sure that they manage, like reading captain Hazel. Before I came into my leadership role, I've been a reading captain now for 3 years and also proudly boast a little free library in our front yard. Next slide. We've celebrated literacy and whoops, I got my pages around. We packed many books and resources. You see reading captains like our regional facilitator, Miss Diane, in the bottom left, putting together our Read by Fourth family engagement literacy collateral, or seeing reading captains like Sophia organizing and putting books together for literacy festivals. Next slide. We've celebrated literacy in surprising places. We have our West Philly reading captains who have really cultivated this wonderful relationship with the Philadelphia Zoo. And you see them decorating their annual Christmas tree competition in a Llama Llama Red Pajama themed tree. We have our Philly ABCs project, you can see a picture of in the center, where we are activating learning and literacy in community spaces and parks and rec centers around the city. And all the way to the right, you see an image of the wonderful work that was done in laundromats that Susan just shared about. Next slide. And one of the most important things with reading captains is having conversations that count, whether that's conversations with families to support families out in the community, like on the left, or conversations that we're having in collaboration with other community leaders and thought partners in this space, like our wonderful reading captain Ermi on the right. Next slide. We give reading captains everything they need, from an initial training to ongoing connection to free family giveaways and advocacy materials. One of the most important giveaways is actually the Reading Captain t-shirt. This isn't just swag, it's a symbol of care for the community, both for themselves and their neighbors. And it's worn proudly at community events across the city and is added bonus of being easy to spot in a crowd. Reading captains are kept in the loop with social media outreach, newsletters, sharing stories about what other reading captains are doing, as well as monthly lunch and learns to keep their learning fresh. There are regional meetings that happen monthly, biannual town halls where we come together to celebrate each other's work and build our networks, because even the fiercest champions need community. And Reading Captains is flexible. It's designed for real people with real lives, with competing priorities. It doesn't have to be a big commitment to make a big difference. It leans on people's hyper-local knowledge. They are experts in their community and can tailor messages and resources to needs outsiders might overlook. Next slide. This past year, we revised a strategic plan for capturing quantitative and qualitative data on reading captains. I think anybody who has managed a volunteer program knows that there's a lot of passion for doing the work, and maybe a little less so for filling out surveys or completing the post-event form. So this revision, we're excited about, and is a win, and we can share more about the specifics and the scope of Reading Captains' impact. Like nearly 15,000 parents and caregivers were reached last year by Reading Captains alone, and that is a real neighbor-to-neighbor connection. Over 53,000 early literacy resources were shared, and that is about double what our organizational partners distributed over the year. And 33,000 children's books were shared with Philly families. And for perspective, that's more books shared than the number of babies born in Philadelphia in a year. Next slide. Not only are reading captains making an impact, they're being recognized for their work, from being celebrated by city council to getting steady news coverage for their accomplishments. Next slide. And change happens at the speed of trust. Experts matter, teachers, doctors, librarians, they are all absolutely essential. But research shows peers are just as powerful. A neighbor who lives your reality, faces your challenges, and celebrates your wins, that's a messenger who breaks through the noise. That's a messenger that matters. Trust is everything. It's what makes families listen and what makes reading captains effective. As support staff running this program, you have to remember there's not just a communication this is not just a communication channel. These are people. So critical to this work is building real two-way relationships with them, just like any valued organizational partner. And you'll be amazed at how rich the impact is. Last slide. Here's what we know. Everyone has a role in growing stronger readers. Reading captains you just saw, like Miss Ty, Mr. Dorian, Diane, Sophia, Hazel, and Ermi, they aren't just being nice neighbors, they're being revolutionary. And every community has untapped champions, just like them. People who are already showing up, who care, and are ready to make an even bigger impact. After 8 years of supporting reading captains, we've picked out 3 lessons that we think worth sharing. 1, innovation isn't always about creating something new. Sometimes it's about reimagining everyday life and activating what's already there. 2, it takes a lot to support reading captains. Yes, they're doing the work, but behind them is a network of systems, operational support, outreach strategies, and real emotional labor of maintaining relationships with and supporting hundreds of people. And 3rd, community is power, full stop. Give the community the tools, pick up the phone and listen to their experiences, support their connections and growth, and watch the magic happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Clinton. It's just so inspirational to hear about this work happening in Philadelphia. And I love the visuals. They really bring the initiative to life. We're going to hear a little bit more now from the perspective of another reading captain. I didn't realize, Clinton, you were also a reading captain, but we are so excited to have Eden Gallen with us today. She's a reading captain and is now as well a regional facilitator with the Reading Captains Program in Philadelphia. She was also involved with the study that looked at literacy in laundromats. And so Eden, can you share with us a little bit about your experience and what it's like being a reading captain?
Yes. I just want to shout you out, Clinton, for that wonderful, like several slides you took us through. What else can I add that it was just amazing. So thank you. Really appreciated all of that wonderful information. So hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Eden Galan. I am an early literacy advocate and also a proud reading captain here in Philadelphia. So I'm just grateful to be invited and be a part of this conversation, talking about reading captains and having the opportunity to share about my personal experience as a reading captain. I was wondering if we could have had some of those photos up because I think it's like a really great visual. But I'm going to share a little bit about what it's like to be a reading captain in a brief amount of time. So I'll try to do the best that I can. I'll share about how I got involved and what the work looks like in real life, as you can see with some of these photos that are shared on the slides there. So I joined the Reading Captains Initiative in 2021. And I remember I'm a mother, so I had recently had my second child, and I'm always looking for like just fun events to take my family to, and fun things to do with my children. So I took them to what I now know was a Reading Promise Festival from Read by Fourth, and that was held at the Smith Memorial Playground. I took them there. We had a lot of fun doing a lot of activities, and I saw a table filled with books. Now, I love reading and I love free things and I love free books, especially. So I'm like, we need to get over to this table and see what is going on here. So the table was filled with children's books. There were a lot of people in that blue Reading Captain t-shirt there. There were alphabet posters and all kinds of resources. And immediately I was intrigued. I love reading and I also really love giving back and volunteering. And I especially love combining the two, volunteering through early literacy and reading, supporting young children with reading. And so I asked, what is this about? I want to sign up. I want to become a reading captain. And I got trained that next month. And here I am today, going on 5 years later. I'm a reading captain, but I'm also now a reading captain facilitator for the Northeast section of Philadelphia. So, there's reading captains all throughout the city, and we kind of divide our city up into different regions because each section, each region, each neighborhood has its own kind of like vibe and culture. And as Clinton and Susan were talking about, um, people know their communities the best. So we split up our regions according to where we have connections. Either that's where we work or where we live, or we're connected with families. And so I support reading captains in the Northeast section of Philadelphia. So, as a reading captain, a lot of times I'm at events, I have my table, and people are like staring and at the table, reading captain, or they're looking at our shirt. What is that? What do you even do? So, we are volunteers, as you've just heard. We are caring neighbors, and we volunteer our time in a very simple way, which is connecting caregivers to information on how to help them support their child's reading development at home. We want There's an early literacy crisis all throughout the nation. And here in Philadelphia, we want to uplift our community. We are partners with Read by Fourth, and we want children to be on grade level reading by the time they reach fourth grade. And the way that we help support that is through engaging their caregivers. And so we focus on caregivers of children ages 0 to 9 up until about third grade. So we give them free children's books. Read by Fourth has a lot of amazing early literacy resources, which they shared on a slide. So there are bookmarks with questions that families can ask their child while they're reading together. We have rat cards, we have ABC flashcards, we have alphabet posters. There are we have like kind of like a magazine with fun, engaging activities to help build that language and literacy development and to encourage parent-child interaction. Yeah, so those are some of the resources there. We have advocacy posters and coloring books. We I could go on and on naming everything, but they really do equip us to go out and share these tools and empower families out in our community.
Ever
And
grateful for you
so
being to them. So
sorry. Um, so we share these resources with families, we distribute the books, but we also share a resource to go along with that. A lot of these are tailored to the child's age or grade. So we have sheets on early reading skills according to grades. So, we share this with families and try to equip them with some tools and empower them with information. So, one big misconception about reading captains is that we might read, with children, and that's all that we do. Some people might assume that we tutor or run programming and work directly with kids. Some reading captains do that because anyone can be a reading captain. I have reading captains who are teachers, former teachers, childcare center directors. So they might do that work through other roles in their life. But the core of our work as reading captains is to work with the adults by equipping them with the tools that they can use every day and empowering them in their role as their child's first teacher. And so one thing I love about this model is that it's really flexible. You make it what you can, and you make it as big or as small as you want it to be. Some people work full time, or our families or retired. So you do what you can. Maybe that looks like you engaging with families on the block where you live or in the building where you live. Some people like to engage families at their church or families through their network work, just all different kinds of places. Some host events, so they create events, and others are just handing out books and talking, having those conversations wherever families spend time. I think that's the most important part is about showing up and being present in spaces where the families already are and just offering simple, practical ways that they can help incorporate literacy and learning into their everyday life, but we share that in a really friendly and a personal way. I'll give two examples. Clinton mentioned about my Latinx Literacy Fest. So I did organize that event for 2 years in a row. We're in the Northeast section of Philadelphia, and Northeast Philly has the most diverse neighborhoods in the city, both linguistically, and there are just so many people from different backgrounds and who speak many different languages. So Read by Fourth also equips us with bilingual resources. I mean, multilingual, just in many different languages, so that the information we share is accessible to the families. Some of us are bilingual reading captains also. And so that event that I put on, the Latinx Literacy Fest, in that particular neighborhood, there's a high Latino population, and I wanted to just uplift, honor, celebrate the Hispanic um, Heritage Month and the culture. So we did that through bilingual storytelling and reading bilingual read alouds, and we shared a lot about different countries, to like symbols and culture, and it's just amazing to see families see themselves reflected in books, in the programming, in activities. And I'm really big on that. I've had AAPI, Asian American um, Story Time at different rec centers, engaging families who have their children in the after school programming and, just uplifting those different cultures that are here in our community. And so that's a couple of events that I've put on. Also, I do attend church, so I interact with families at my church by distributing. I had received a donation of book bags, and I paired that with some resources and material from Read by Fourth, and was able to talk with families at my church. Some people in West Philly go and they have that partnership with the zoo, and they engage families who are coming to the zoo. Again, it's very flexible. You make it what you want and what you can. And each neighborhood and region is different. I am not sure where I am at on time right now, but I'm going to jump into the laundromat if that's okay. Um,
Yeah, you have another minute or two. Go ahead, Eden.
Okay, so I was involved with the laundromat study with NYU, and that was a really great opportunity to be able to also bring early literacy into places where families already spend a lot of time. And there, I did a lot of what I already do as a reading captain, but I was tasked with leading story time, engaging with the children, and really modeling, talking, reading, singing, and playing for caregivers at those laundromats to show them how they can engage their children in just literacy rich activities and incorporate that in everyday moments like waiting for laundry to wash or dry. And we had so much fun at those laundry mats. Let me tell you, the kids, the families, it was a really amazing time. We did a lot of bilingual story time and activities like playing I Spy. Kaboom installed a lot of really wonderful um, posters, and we had like hopscotch printed on the floor, and there were posters, and it made it really easy to help engage the children and to model that for the families who showed up. And so then also we talk with the families who were there. So maybe there was a family of a child who was 4. So we talk with them about getting ready for registering for kindergarten. So we just shared like some messaging, important messaging to the families. And we had tip sheets to talk with them about using those everyday moments and how they can make literacy happen anywhere. So that's a little bit about my experience. The reading captain model, I love it. I'm proud to be a reading captain. And I think that it really works because it's rooted in relationships. It's neighbors talking to other neighbors, and we're sharing information in a way that feels personal and trustworthy. And so, again, I'm just really proud to be a part of this program, and, my hope is that this model continues to grow, especially here in Philadelphia, but also in communities across the country. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Eden. We can really tell how much you love it and also how much of an impact you're making, not only in your community, but now more broadly. So thank you for all the work you're doing. And I need you to come to my block in New York City. You make it sound so fun. So as I mentioned earlier on, there are communities that have heard about Reading Captains in Philadelphia and have wanted to have the program where they are as well. And one of those is the state of Missouri, and specifically in St. Louis, we're going to hear today about some of the work they're doing. So I'm going to turn things over to Lisa Greening, who's going to talk a little bit about how they brought the program there, and what it took to sort of think through that replication. Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm Lisa Greening. I'm the Executive Director of Turn the Page STL. And I saw some people in the chat asking about chapters of the campaign for grade level reading. And there's about 300 across the country. Read by Fourth is one of our strongest, I would actually say, one of the beginning chapters, but we've got about 300 across the country. And the chapter of the campaign for grade level reading in St. Louis is called Turn the Page STL. And we're a collective, and we look at I'll step back. 4 years ago, I started a chapter of the campaign for grade level reading in St. Louis because our reading proficiency rates were extraordinarily low. We spent an entire year meeting with focus groups of everything from superintendents to families to teachers to libraries, organizations to find out why. Why were our kids not reading proficiently by the end of 3rd grade? And I'm sitting in this group of families, and I said, why do you choose not to send your child to summer camp, a free summer camp down the street? We know that the summer slide is real and that we need to deter that. I didn't say it in those terms, but you get what I mean. And one woman said, oh, well, my neighbor said that that's not a good camp, so we don't send our kids to that camp. I said, does everybody got their kids signed up for pre-K? We know how important pre-K is. Oh, well, I don't do pre-K because the lady 3 blocks over said don't do pre-K, and you don't need to do pre-K. And I really, really realized that a lot of what was happening in our St. Louis community, one of the greatest factors was that we didn't have that trusted messenger to tell everyone, to show everyone, to communicate with everyone that of all the great resources here in St. Louis. So I had the honor of meeting with the folks at Read by Fourth in Philadelphia, learned a lot about their Reading Captains program, and I brought it to one of, I think, most extraordinary literacy nonprofits here in St. Louis, Ready Readers, and somehow convinced, I'm still thrilled that I was able to ask Ready Readers to run a similar, and Lauren Campbell will tell you the similarities and the differences of running a Reading Captains program here in St. Louis, Missouri. So Lauren here is our community program coordinator at Ready Readers, and I'll let you talk.
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Campbell. I'm the Community Programming Coordinator at Ready Readers. And so really excited to be on this call and to share about the work that our captains are doing here. So really to start, I just thank you to Eden and Clinton and Dr. Newman and Lisa and your words. I echo every single thing that you all said. And a lot of the work that has been done in Philadelphia is exactly what we are doing and trying to do here in St. Louis. So I'm just going to spend a little time sharing about the neighborhood reading captains program here in St. Louis, kind of how we got started, our model, how it's a little different from Philadelphia. And again, some of the differences that we're doing, different things that our captains are doing, and the impact that we're hoping to make. So like Lisa mentioned, she brought this idea to Ready Readers several years ago, and we decided to run with it. And so we started our program officially piloting it in a St. Louis City neighborhood in 2023. And so we are coming up on 3 years now, so it's really exciting. Basically, the goal was to increase access to literacy outside of the classroom through, like everyone's been saying, these trusted relationships with the community. We did recognize that there is a distrust, with communities and institutions and organizations, and so we knew that the community and neighbors were going to be those trusted messengers that we wanted to tap into. And so with inspiration from the Philadelphia Reading Captains program, we wanted to reach folks in the community and build that trust. So we started with seeking feedback from community members, organizations, focus groups, like Lisa mentioned, and decided to start. Our program is neighborhood based. If you're familiar with kind of the landscape of St. Louis, we have lots of different neighborhoods that folks live in. So we have like focus neighborhoods that we focus on. And so we are very intentional about the neighborhoods that we decide to bring our program to. We kind of make that decision through both an asset approach and a needs-based approach. We recognize that there are lots of needs in these kind of under-resourced, marginalized communities. And so we look at the needs and the challenges while also looking at the assets that they have. Things like engaged neighborhood associations, other maybe literacy organizations, strong faith-based communities, that sort of thing is kind of some of the decisions some of the factors we use to make the decisions about which neighborhoods we go into. And so once we have made the decision about the focus neighborhood, again, we kind of continue building those relationships and start looking for captains. So where our work is a little different from the Philadelphia program is that we decided to go with a compensation model. So we offer kind of a stipend to compensate our captains for their time. So our captains, we do definitely believe in the power of volunteer work. It's super impactful. Our other programming, our Storytime program that we have here at Ready Readers is completely volunteer led. So we definitely appreciate the work that volunteers do. And we decided that we wanted to compensate our captains. So they do get paid for their work. Similar to the Philadelphia program, it's also, it is not prescriptive. So we empower our captains to make decisions about how they bring literacy to their community in whatever way feels organic to them. And then we compensate them for their time. And so, again, we've got this going in one neighborhood. We are currently operating in 5 neighborhoods now in St. Louis. So that's pretty exciting. Something else that I would also kind of like to celebrate, and that's a little bit different from even the model that we started with, is that last year we decided that we wanted to partner specifically with the St. Louis Housing Authority and implement our Reading Captains program in some of their developments. And what's kind of unique about that program is that we were able to pivot our model to fit the residents that live in the St. Louis Housing Authority development. So for example, those residents have income requirements, and we did not want to disrupt that or put those residents in a position where they could not continue to live in their housing. So we, again, partnered with the folks at the St. Louis Housing Authority to make sure that our pay structure didn't disrupt anything for them, and that it was just really a true partnership. So we were able to kind of modify some things for those captains and get the program going. And so we now, we were also very intentional with the data that the Housing Authority folks have about which developments to have reading captains in. So we talked about developments that had a high population of families, of kiddos under 18, kind of strong resident engagement. And so we have 3 housing developments that we have reading captains in, and that's been a really, really wonderful experience. We've really been able to partner with the Housing Authority through their resident-led initiatives, through they have some kind of like community-based events and resources that they provide. So we work really well with them to make sure we're partnering and bringing these residents not only just literacy resources, but kind of all the resources that the Housing Authority has available to their residents. So that has been a really impactful part of our program, and I'm glad we were able to do that. So also just to give you an example of some of the activities that our reading captains are participating in, very similar to what Eden and Clinton shared as far as Philadelphia. But our captains are also able to steward Little Free Libraries. So we currently have 5 Little Free Libraries throughout the St. Louis neighborhood, and that number is growing. And again, kind of in those everyday spaces that we've been talking about. So not only are they in front of folks' houses, they are at community businesses that people frequently go to. We had one recently, one of our reading captains put a Little Free Library inside of a gas station that is near a kind of a very busy corner in her neighborhood. So we're really excited about that. And outside of other community organizations, we have captains that are also doing book giveaways and programming and story times in places like barbershops, churches, fast food restaurants, basketball courts, in their neighborhood community meetings, community gardens. So again, very much those everyday places and spaces. Again, we're partnering with other neighborhood organizations, with schools for their events. You know, it's fall season, so there's lots of trunk or treats that we've been able to participate in. And I don't know how excited the kids get to get a book instead of candy, but it's a pretty fun experience to be there at those trunk or treats. This past year, we had one of our very first captain-led literacy workshops. She is leading a workshop called the Family Reading Warriors. And so it is a bilingual workshop that she's able to invite families to come and just learn about literacy, reading routines. They get books. There's an art kind of creative activity to go with each session. So that's been really, really exciting to see. They're spending time reading with neighbors in their homes, talking with them about literacy routines. To date, our captains have given out over 10,000 books, so that is really, really exciting as well. And we're also just working to continue to measure the impact that we're making in some of those short and long-term outcomes. We are seeing that families are starting to feel more connected to their community, more connected to community resources. Conversations are being had just around literacy and reading routines. Kids are feeling more excited about reading and a more interest in reading and books. Families are reading more frequently at home. And so we're really hoping that with some of these smaller changes and these smaller outcomes to create systemic change and have systemic outcomes, because as we've heard and as we know, literacy rates are at an all-time low, and it's super important to have these trusted, reliable people in the community that are that their neighbors can trust, and to hopefully again create that systemic change that we will see some literacy rates start to go up, and families will feel more empowered to do this work at home, and then we'll see the benefits of that in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. It's so great to hear about both the ways that you are similar to the Philadelphia program and the ways that you have made changes that make sense for how the work is happening in St. Louis. And I loved hearing about all the amazing different activities that the reading captains are doing. I'd like to ask all of our presenters to come back on camera. We're going to have a bit of a discussion. And before I do that, I just wanted to also invite anyone who has questions to go ahead and put them in the Q&A box. We are saving some time toward the end to answer some questions. Some of them have been answered in the Q&A box, so go ahead and check those out as well. But please feel free to keep adding questions, and we will spend some time toward the end addressing some of those. For now, I wanted to start with a question for Dr. Newman or others after she speaks around the evaluation that you were doing with trusted messengers and reading captains and others in laundromats. What were you left wanting to know after you did the evaluation? What did you want to learn more based on what you had learned?
Well, that's such an interesting question. I think there are lots of wonderings I had. How does what is learned outside of the school context relate to what goes on inside the school context? I think we need to build better bridges between what goes inside and outside. And that would force the schools to recognize the importance of family, to recognize the importance of community in supporting some of those critical learning skills. So that's one of the things I would love to learn. I also want to see, and I'm delighted to hear these other examples of how the reading captain notion applies to other situations and other contexts. For example, we've seen how librarians can act as trusted messengers, how nurses can act as trusted messengers. I think we should broaden the notion of the roles these people can have in order to really um, make this a more universal understanding of how we can support our children.
Thank you. I know there were a few people in the chat that talked about things that they were doing similar. And if you have something in your community that's similar, we'd love to hear about it in the chat right now. Feel free to put any comments in there that are related to what Dr. Newman is talking about. I know I remember hearing about the community where they were, the doctors were writing prescriptions to read, similar to Reach Out and Read, but also even without Reach Out and Read, they'd maybe heard about that program and were writing prescriptions. So I love thinking about broadening, like you said, the idea of trusted messengers in communities. Anyone else on the panel have thoughts that came to you based on sort of Dr. Newman's work around what you're doing, how you may want to do things differently or similar based on some of what she learned or what you've heard from each other?
I would just like to jump in and say, Dr. Newman, your 360 model that you talk about, that is what they're doing now in Kansas City. It's
Ah,
called the 360. I don't know if that you know that, but it is a trusted messenger 360 program. So just a big shout out for Missouri is what I would like to do. And thank you for that, for your great research.
Oh, great, thank you.
I'll just add to that what Lisa was saying. I definitely just appreciate the work and the article. I've shared it with everybody here at the Ready Readers team. I'm also going to share it with our reading captains just so I mean, we know we're doing, and they know that they're doing impactful work, but I think it's nice to also see like research is actually being done, that this work is meaningful and it makes a difference. I've talked to the captains a lot about these kind of everyday places that they can be, bringing literacy. And so I'm definitely going to suggest, I love the idea of the laundromat setup. So I'm definitely going to encourage them to look for opportunities to kind of replicate that. And then also just to add to the trusted messenger part, I think, especially something that was highlighted to me with some of our reading captains is that it definitely goes beyond like just literacy and just books. For example, one of our captains was very active during the election. And so she had a little free library outside of one of our kind of like bigger organizations here in St. Louis. And so she was not only putting books, but she was also putting like election information and pamphlets and things about the candidates and all that kind of stuff in her little free library for families to have access to as well. So I think it's just important to note that these trusted messengers, it's not just books. It's just a messenger for resources in general. And I think the work that we're all doing just increases the knowledge and access folks have to kind of just like all things to be engaged, citizens.
That's right. Can I just add, it's all about relationships. And I just want to emphasize that we often think of literacy as a cognitive activity, but it's all about establishing close connections with people, having them understand that relationships really matter and they matter for literacy development.
Yeah, I think about parents reading to their kids, cuddling up and reading, and
Yeah.
this idea, Ori, in the chat that you're talking about, the reading circles in your laundromat in Winchester, Virginia, is just a very similar kind of concept where kids are feeling safe and loved, and associating that with reading. It's so important. So thank you for that point, Dr. Newman. Other thoughts, Clinton or Eden, from the from what you've seen based on the study or what you've heard? Oh, Clinton, you're on mute.
Thank you. I moved my panels around and lost my control menu. Yeah, the study, and I have read the academic paper, not just the bullet points. I was very excited and had my nerdy afternoon with that. But yeah, thinking beyond just the presence and what it takes to activate literacy spaces, not just here, but in other places. We've talked a lot about playful learning and playful learning installations in and around Philly over the past few years, and have been part of some projects. And those things existing are great, if not just nice, but really having the importance of having people to invite in, to engage, and to model behaviors is really critical. We talk all the time about how, parents are the first teachers of reading to kids, but very few parents are literacy experts, classroom teachers, experience in ELA instruction. So thinking about, the lesson, the big takeaway of having reading captains there and how that activated, where else can we have greater impact with the presence of reading captains or a partner that agrees to steward an installation or a little free library, to make sure that it's inviting and doesn't just kind of like so it doesn't fade into the background.
Thank you, Clinton. We have a question right here in the chat, and it's a little related, so I thought I would bring it up right now, Dr. Newman. Someone is asking, Nikita is asking about parent responses that show the impact of the work being done. Anything in the work that you did that focused on sort of the parent role or how they experienced the trusted messengers in the laundromat?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. So it was very interesting. As I said, we've done this project in 3 large cities now. And one of the things that we found is in the beginning, what we did, especially in New York and Chicago, is librarians were our trusted messengers. And very interestingly, they went out to the community rather than the community always having to come into the library. And they did some wonderful work in terms of helping children learn about literacy, the 5 pillars of literacy, etc. At the same time, interestingly, um, parents were wowed by them, but sometimes stood away from them because librarians are considered professionals. They're considered, knowledgeable about literacy and language. And so parents would come and take pictures of their children interacting with the librarian, but often not interacting directly with the librarian because of the status differential. So in Philadelphia, when we had reading captains who were of and by the community, there was a sense of comfort with parents. And as well, we often found that there were almost like coffee clatches, like the parents would come into the literacy related space, sit at the table alongside the reading captain and chat alongside the children and the parents interacting. So I think that there is all of our trusted messengers are wonderful, librarians, nurses, etc. But there's something special about having someone directly from the community interacting with others from their community. They understand it in a way that someone who is outside that community just simply can't. And so we found that there is greater parent involvement when someone was from the community than when it was not.
That's such an important point and really interesting. It makes sense. I think it's also related. Well, did somebody else want to speak to that at all? Okay. We've had a couple of other questions that come up that I think are a little bit related to that question. Around parents who may have low literacy skills or not confident in reading to their children, and how do either the Trusted Messengers or some of these programs help support those families and parents? Anyone have some thoughts on that they'd like to
I have a lot of thoughts, so I'll
jump right in?
Well, I say to parents that one of the great things that parents can do with their children is talk about themselves and their history, and they all have stories to tell. And what I think is really important is traditionally we've always thought that book reading is the centerpiece of literacy, but it's actually not. Um, it's all the other things that the parent does with the child that is so natural. So we have many parents who don't feel comfortable in reading to children, and we've assessed it. We can see it. So we say, do other things. Take your child places. Go to the laundromat and talk to them. So we have talk, play, read, write, sing with their children. They can all do that. They can all sing their child a lullaby or a song, and that is phonological awareness and literacy in different forms. So I think we have to come off the notion that there's a single approach to literacy development and recognize that so much of what parents do, whether it's eye-to-eye interaction, whether it's conversation, whether it's singing to their child, that's all about literacy. So that's what I say.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would
A couple of other-
add in, I would add in the serve and return that parents can do with their children is extraordinarily vital. And we talk about word gaps by age 3, and that's not necessarily reading, that's conversation, relational conversation. So yes, serve and return, you don't need to read.
Right.
And also just going back to the importance of the conversation. If you have a parent who is illiterate or underliterate, they aren't going to engage with something on a shelf or on a table or a leaflet that goes into a bag. So those conversations are critical in bringing them into understanding. We also make sure that our materials are written at around a 4th grade level, so that we know the rates of underliteracy and illiteracy of adults in Philadelphia. So we do try to keep the language simple and straightforward. But a lot of times with underliterate adults and underliterate parents and caregivers, as well as parents and caregivers who, I don't like to say ESL because for many families it's their 3rd, 4th, or 5th language they're learning. But a lot of times you have parents who are learning to read English alongside their children. So engaging and encouraging activity that is for both of them. So when you can, it's difficult. It's difficult because it's usually more expensive, but having bilingual books where a parent can read it both in English and Spanish is honoring and recognizing where that family is in the languages that they speak, but it's also a sort of like inadvertent resource for parents too, as they're learning and refreshing or refining their English skills.
Right.
Thanks, Clinton.
Yeah, I think a lot of people added. But I was also going to share that Read by Fourth did have a post with some resources for adult education resources in Philadelphia too. So we have a lot of these conversations with family, kind of talking about you can use like a picture walk, or you can read in your native language, or many other things that some of my panelists have already mentioned. And I also wanted to just bring up those resources for parents as well.
Thank you.
And one last add-on is both the adult literacy resources, but also, having, hey, here are the libraries with ESL classes, knowing that if a family is facing other hardships, that literacy may not be a top priority. So knowing, hey, if you go to this United Way website, you can find answers for resources for food insecurity, housing insecurity, trauma, family planning. So also being prepared for some of the resources that would be helpful and it will grow that social capital in the community with parents and caregivers. But knowing that literacy is not always going to be the first priority, and having some answers and resources for the other stuff too.
Good point.
That's great. That's great. I love that you said picture walk, Eden, because I've heard of places where, a lot of the modeling of reading that happens, they say you don't even have to read. You can, like, babies are looking at picture books, and you can just point out the pictures and talk about what you see. And that's still sending the message to the kids that it's important to read, right? So I think there's so many ways, and I love, especially as we've said here, that may be a message that's harder to hear from a teacher or a nurse, but that our reading captains who are doing this modeling are in sort of really less high stakes ways, encouraging families to just do whatever makes sense for them to increase literacy and the love of books and reading and learning. So thanks to everyone for that. We do have a quick question here, Lisa, about defining and describing serve and return. Could you talk a little more about that? Heidi?
Yes, I'm muted. Yes, I was muted. Yes, I was typing away an answer about Missouri Family Resources that our neighborhood reading captains use here. But serve and return, talk, tune in, and take turns. So it's your child says, why? You don't say, no, sit down. You say, what do you mean by why? Or your child says, food. You say, what kind of food would you like? What color of food would you like? And go back and forth and just keep that language. I know Dr. Newman can explain this a lot better than I can, but it's just simply, it's going to that grocery store, that everyday place, and saying, are we going to pick out the red apples or the yellow apples? And engaging the child back and forth. It's a great way to keep them quiet too. When you're struggling with kids, it's just you just get that brain moving back and forth, back and forth. So that's what I meant by serve and return.
My colleague, Sandra Cabell, and her colleague suggests that we strive for 5. And the notion of striving for 5 means 5 conversational turns. So in other words, if you say, "Oh, what a gorgeous day today," and the child says, "Well, what kind of day is it?" "Well, what kind of day do you think it is?" "Oh, I think it's sunny out." "What do we do when it's sunny out?" And then extend the conversation. By 5 turns, you get a richer conversation than if you just have a couple of turns. And the longer the turns, the more the language, the greater the language and the richness of the language. So I encourage you to look at that resource.
Thank you. We've had a couple questions here about sort of how do you prepare or train reading captains? What kind of training do they receive? Are there curriculum out there or other things that other communities might be able to leverage to do something similar? Anyone have thoughts on that they could share? And we just had our poll come up. We're going to keep on talking while you answer that. We'd love to have you complete that because we really get a lot from your feedback. Thank you.
I can share a little bit about our St. Louis, how we train our captains. So once captains have been kind of like hired and onboarded, part of the onboarding is every captain has to attend an orientation, and that's about a 2-hour training where we not only talk about just Ready Readers and our organization and kind of the work that we do. But we share about kind of the resources that we're able to provide. We share other resources that are available in St. Louis. We give the goal is also to hopefully have captains talk with each other about some of the work that they are hoping to do or that they want to do. They receive books, a t-shirt, some other kind of swag and materials from that orientation. And then we do ongoing quarterly meetings, where so like, for example, in our meetings that we've kind of just had, I had a representative from Parents as Teachers come and talk to the captains about kind of how to kind of bridge that connection, or just other community members that might be beneficial to the captains. Again, I just kind of continue to share resources with them over time. They continue to get books from us, and we just make sure to keep that channel of communication open between our organization and the captains, for any ideas or questions or resources that they might need or they have.
Thank you. And thanks, Simone, our rock star in the chat, who's posting so many great resources from Read by Fourth. Any other thoughts, Clinton and Eden, that you wanted to add in about how you're supporting reading captains in Philly?
Yeah, I think critical, you know, a lot of things that Lauren's doing, we're doing as well. Critical to the orientation, though, I think, is making sure that the mission is very clear, and you're calibrating expectations for what this is. I know as a social worker, it's been my mission to make it aggressively clear this is not a child-serving organization. We are facing parents, caregivers, and we do engage with kids, but it's in public spaces with parents there. This is not a go to a classroom, read to a kid one-on-one kind of space. We even have a slide of like what reading captains are and what they aren't. So calibrating those expectations early on saves a lot of headaches down the road. And we have a couple of channels where we have ongoing education opportunities for anybody in the campaign. And then occasionally we will do more targeted, specific learning opportunities in reaction to what we're hearing back. So as we've been doing a little bit more in advocacy work the past year or two, you know, we've had reading captains say, you know, they feel like they aren't as confident or competent in advocacy work. So in a few weeks, we have an amazing partner coming in to do an advocacy 101 online training. We have our Lunch and Learn series that are all recorded and on our YouTube page. That is also, you know, sometimes reading captains are self-driving, and it's varied, and I have not been in every regional meeting, but some of the monthly regional meetings led by our regional facilitators will also hone in and do some micro learning based on the needs of the reading captains in that region.
I'll add on a little bit to that since I am the regional facilitator for Northeast Philly. So a part of my role is to help, you know, manage like the reading captains. I don't do any formal training, but I try to reinforce some of the information that is shared. Even in my work outside, like in my career outside of being a reading captain, I'm always gathering more like information on resources, early literacy, early childhood education. And so I just love learning. So I share that information with my reading captain, and I try to make sure that they're up to date with the latest resources, role playing, sharing key messages to families, seeing if anyone has any questions, concerns, if there's anything that we could do different while we're out in the community. So that's a little bit what I do as the facilitator with my group of reading captains in our section of the city.
Thank you, Eden. So we have one last question. Oh, Dr. Newman, were you going to say something? Sorry, I thought maybe you were about to say something. Sorry.
No.
We have one final question we wanted to sort of check in with people on around for communities that are hearing about this program for the first time and are kind of interested in starting a reading captains program or something similar. As you kind of reflect back on sort of when you started as a reading captain or you started a program, what would you think, what would you say would be sort of the first steps or some top tips that you would give to a community or a state that might be interested in starting something similar? Any sort of lessons learned that you have that you would want to share?
I would say first, I think it starts with just talking to the community that you are wanting to serve. You need to get feedback from them first. Yes, we all know that illiteracy is an issue Trusted messengers is an issue, but yeah, I think you would want to talk to the community that you're hoping to serve first and get their feedback before anybody, just to make sure you are providing what's needed, wanted, what's helpful, all of that. And yeah, I think that's a good place to start.
Great, super. Thank you, Lauren.
I'll add to that a couple of things. One, know your backyard. Check what's the literacy ecosystem or landscape where you find yourself. Is this being done already? Let's not be redundant. Has this been tried before? And if it's failed, why? Learning from the past experiences in the ecosystem. And then also looking at similar models. And, it doesn't have to be literacy oriented. I know that a lot of my management here is heavily influenced by my years with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and how I think about some of these things. And the other big thing that came up for me is timing. As an organization, however big, however small, are you ready to take on a volunteer management program? It was just a couple of lines, but it is to do it well, and to do it in honoring and respecting the individuals takes a lot of work and effort and prep. One of my personal crusades is making sure that partners and people in our city know that reading captains are not free labor. Yeah, so like asking yourself, do we have the resources, and staffing, capacity, bandwidth, print, digital, to get this off the ground, to make this work, are some other questions you should be asking yourself.
Thank you, Clinton. So wise, both of your replies. I really appreciate that. So I just want to wrap up by thanking all of you, Dr. Newman. We love when there's research that comes out that helps support and really justify what communities are trying to do. And so we so appreciate the just critical work you're doing to help lift up the importance of this type of work, and look forward to hearing about your next project, whatever that is.
Workshops.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. That's great. And then Clinton and Eden, we appreciate so much your willingness to share sort of what you do, and be so willing to take time to help other people try to do an amazing program like you have. And then similarly, Lisa and Lauren, I know you're out there sharing with others as well, and we loved hearing about the program in St. Louis. So thank you to all of you today. I'm gonna ask Sierra to pull back up the slide for our upcoming webinars in case you want to take in another one today. We'll have one this afternoon at 3, focused on revisiting Head Start as a cornerstone for early learning and development. Next week, we'll have a webinar focused on technology enhanced supports for English language learners. And then, as you heard, the following week, a funder to funder conversation focused on a new PBS show, Phoebe and Jay, as well as a session focused on the growth and potential of micro schools. And you can find out about all of those on the website, as we posted the links earlier. So thank you to all of you for joining us, and we hope everybody has a great rest of your day.